April 2015, Nepal. A massive earthquake rips through the tallest mountain range on Earth, triggering deadly landslides and avalanches on a scale never previously recorded.
That was the moment where I really thought, maybe I'm gonna die now.
Oh my God. Every moment of the catastrophe caught on camera.
It's scary. It's frightening stuff right now. This place just looks like a war zone.
Behind the news headlines, the true story of what happened is only now emerging. Rescuers race to free those trapped under the rubble.
He's a hero!
Experts piece together the science of the quake.
Wait a minute. There's got to be something wrong. It's a 7.4, my goodness.
Unseen footage and eyewitnesses relive astonishing tales of survival.
Major earthquake! Oh my gosh, it's like the whole mountain's coming down.
Climber Joost Kobush is just 22. His ambition is to conquer the world's highest peaks.
Climbing is my life. I couldn't imagine not to climb.
April 2015, after months of training, he's ready for the ultimate challenge.
Climbing Everest or climbing an 8,000-meter peak takes a long preparation. Maybe you get this opportunity once in a lifetime.
But the mountain is about to test him in a way he never expected. "100 miles across Nepal, it's another busy morning in the capital of Kathmandu. Suddenly, at 11:56 a.m., the peace is shattered. The quake is so strong, it's felt as far afield as India and across the Himalayas in Tibet. Massive boulders tumble down the mountainside. The epicenter's here, about 50 miles northwest of Kathmandu. Magnitude 7.8. Immediately, the shockwaves ripple out and tremors hit Mount Everest. Everest Base Camp. It's the height of the climbing season. May is one of the best months to tackle the peaks. Joost Kobush is here, along with 100 other climbers.
I decided to take a day off. Actually was supposed to be up in the icefall, but I just had a bad feeling about it. So we were having breakfast, we were having a second breakfast when later people arrived, and it was just a normal day.
The ground is shaking.
For me, the avalanche looked like a big tsunami coming towards me, a tsunami made of ice. And I think that was the moment where I really thought, maybe I'm gonna die now.
No, wait. Yeah.
After a minute, I think, this shock wave and everything was slowing down a bit. And that was the moment where I felt like, okay, it must be over.
Stay together. And we try to find the kitchen tent. Oh no, there's no kitchen tent left. The kitchen tent is... Kitchen tent is down.
Then we just started running to a safe place, to a place we thought which would be safe.
Oh, shit.
I think this avalanche was definitely one of the most powerful forces of nature I've experienced. I've been in other avalanches, but I never saw something that huge.
Moments after the earthquake at one of Kathmandu's oldest religious sites, the Monkey Temple. Survivors rushed to free those trapped in the rubble. The dust clears over Kathmandu. Across Nepal, hundreds of communities are destroyed. For most, it's the worst earthquake in living memory. Around 9,000 dead. More than 22,000 injured. And over 3 million people are homeless. On a hill in the west of Kathmandu, parts of the Monkey Temple teeter on the brink of collapse. It's more than 1,500 years old, revered by both Buddhists and Hindus. Ashok, a priest, was here when the earthquake struck. He was almost crushed alive.
I watched as these buildings collapsed. Lots of dust made it hard to see. It was like the entire temple hill was filled with dust. Tourists were scattered all around and didn't know where to go. Chinese, Indian, and European tourists were all running. After about 2 hours, we heard a voice coming from under this bell. There was a hole under the bell, and we heard a child's voice. He was crying. We heard him crying. Then we ran over and started to remove the pile of rubble. We scoured the earth by hand, and as we dug with our hands, we removed large quantities of rubble, and we found the child alive. I pulled the child out, and he gave me a hug. the child was alive. I looked over here and saw the door had collapsed, and below it, a man was trapped. He already looked dead, but I couldn't go up and rescue him because the ground was still shaking. He couldn't move.
When the earthquake struck, the shock waves traveled through the Earth and along its surface. Over 7,000 miles from Kathmandu, scientists at the United States Geological Survey in Colorado pick up the signals from Nepal. This alerts Professor Roger Billam, who's been studying earthquakes in the Himalayas for over 30 years.
I immediately had a look to see how much money we had in the bank, and I purchased a ticket on the next flight to Kathmandu. It's very important to get to an epicentral region as soon as possible. Pretty soon, all the details of what happened get covered up. Those little bits of forensic information are needed to reconstruct the acceleration during the earthquake.
The energy released by this earthquake is huge. In 2010, 316,000 people died in Haiti when it was hit by a magnitude 7 earthquake. It's been compared to 32 Hiroshima bombs. The recent 7.8 earthquake in Nepal is much bigger. The comparison is 504 Hiroshimas.
We've never caught one in the act of slipping in the Himalaya. And the dozens of instruments that have been operating during the earthquake tell us in great detail how slip occurred.
The origins of this earthquake are rooted in the collision of two massive pieces of the Earth's crust. 50 million years ago, the Indian tectonic plate traveled north and smashed into the Eurasian plate. This collision is what created the Himalayas in the first place. And the Indian plate continues to push north at about 3/4 of an inch a year. The plates push against each other and stick, causing pressure to build up. On April 25th, some of that pressure was released when the fault between the two plates ruptured almost 10 miles below ground. That caused the earthquake.
This is a significant earthquake because it's telling us so much about the processes underneath the Himalaya.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome place to be. Back at base camp. Let's hope with a bit more luck. I think we'll have a bit more luck.
In the aftermath of the earthquake, incredible stories of survival begin to emerge. Climber Paul Devaney at Everest Base Camp is close to being swept off the mountain.
Inside. Whoa, inside. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, get down. Put his head, Come on. Close the door. Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, wow. That's huge. Oh, my God. That's huge. Seriously, you're going to be okay. Yeah.
It's a disaster zone down there in the middle of the camp. It's completely wiped out. Adventure consultants, there's a whole lot of camps right in the middle that are just gone to nothing. Oh boy, it's scary. It's frightening stuff right now. This place is just like a war zone. This is our camp here. You can see a lot of snow and we're looking out over base camp. Maybe about 40 minutes since the earthquake. And everyone's still pretty shaken up, but the priority is where is everyone? Where are the Sherpa? Where are the climbers? It's a scene of pretty surreal devastation. It really is something else. Yeah, it's like a plane crash or something.
The base camp avalanche is a deadly mixture of ice, snow, and rocks. It was so big when it stops, it blocks the entire way down the mountain.
And that's where the wall of snow came thundering towards us with incredible speed. And yeah, you back up into the icefall, we can't see anything. So it's the eeriness of not being able to see anything. I can't express to you how it felt to have the whole glacier moving violently underneath you, dancing around the place. Wow, it was something else. Something else. And then to see that and turn around and see a wall of snow coming, flying at you at incredible speed and smashing into the tents. I think it had lost most of its energy by the time it got to us, and thank goodness for that.
A lot of impact injuries, where a lot of the tents and a lot of the kitchen equipment had been picked up and just flung with the force of the energy. Some people were hit with debris coming at them, and for anyone that was standing up, it just picked them up and threw them like rag dolls across the middle of base camp. So it was a horrific scene.
So it's evening time. It's around 8 o'clock, and what do you say? The consequence tonight is that there's 11 people dead, and there's about 15 people fighting for their lives. Sherpa here don't know what to do. They've never seen this here, never. In the history of expeditions on this mountain, there's never been such a catastrophe at base camp. And yeah, I think everyone's in shock, and so am I, so it's definitely the most frightening thing I've ever lived through. And we're lucky because we've lived through it so far.
It's only later Paul and the other climbers learn the grim news. It's not just Everest. The earthquake has devastated the entire country.
We're hearing numbers of 2,500, 3,000, 4,000. As the day goes on, it grows, and you're up to 5,000 people. And you realize this is a national disaster. And what happened in base camp is kind of like just a kind of microcosm of that larger tragedy.
But the disaster is far from over. Aftershocks continue for days. The danger of falling buildings a constant threat. Rescuers risk their own lives to find survivors. 5 days after the quake, and there seems little chance of finding anyone alive.
We were told that there's voices heard in a void space. We have a search reconnaissance team with us right now. We're going to go out, hopefully locate that victim.
A 15-year-old boy is trapped underground.
It's what we call an entombment. So he wasn't specifically crushed, but what he was inside of a box with the heavy concrete all around him.
A policeman crawls in and speaks to the boy.
First of all, I knocked the air, but no response. After calling many times, the boy responded.
Buried under the rubble, Pemba Tamang is getting weaker by the minute. For 5 long hours, they battle to bring him out into daylight.
First time I approached to him, I made a light to him, his face, and he was so astonished, so amazing, and I assured him that we are here to rescue you, please, you don't worry, and be safe and calm, be confident, we'll rescue you.
After so many deaths, Pemba's remarkable survival gives Nepal a moment of hope.
I was eating, and then the earthquake hit. While I was trying to get out, the walls broke into pieces and fell onto me. My aunt and others were there too, but I think they were covered in rubble. I felt shaking sometimes, like there were other quakes. Everything shook. I don't know how many hours I was there for. I don't know what happened at all. Then something bright came in, and I woke up, and I realized I'd been hallucinating. I want to see my family, but they say they can't get in touch with them.
Really difficult to track him. It was really difficult to track him, but we did it. Really great job, yes.
He's the lead operator, the lead rescuer. He's a hero. Yeah.
A successful rescue. But Nepal is still in danger. Expert geologists arrive to find out exactly what happened. Professor Roger Billam is one of them.
I hope it doesn't happen, but we may have another large...
They don't have much time. They need to reach electronic earthquake monitoring stations and collect the data to work out where another quake might strike.
Actually, a sense of urgency. We were arriving here as soon as we could to collect data that would otherwise be lost, because it's being collected at a very high rate and it's filling up a memory buffer, and when it gets to full memory, it starts overwriting in the beginning.
33 kilometers, Lagunche.
John Galetska has been busily collecting all these data from throughout Nepal using helicopters. There's a huge sense of urgency of getting the data before it's lost.
John flies out to a GPS station recording information about the earthquake.
They'll be back. They're going to take some injured people. Okay.
So this is one of maybe 4 stations directly over the rupture. What we have here is a continuous GPS station. So really it's anchored into the earth here, about 1.5 meters or 2 meters, glued in.
The position of these stations is being measured using GPS technology. GPS satellites constantly orbit the Earth, broadcasting radio signals to GPS stations on the ground. If a station moves by even a fraction, that is picked up and recorded at the station itself.
Okay, station's working. We are going to download the data. This high sample rate data will show us the shaking, the strong motion, the big seismic waves, and the movement of the plate at the same time. So this station was about right here 10 days ago. And then the earthquake happened. So seismic waves, and then seismic waves and the tectonic movement, the plate shifting, and then the antenna settled to where it is right now.
By collecting data from all 37 GPS stations, they will get a detailed picture of how the tectonic plates have moved and how Nepal's landscape has changed forever.
It's been fried somehow. There will always be earthquakes in the Himalaya. But if they build strong house, it's no problem.
This information could save lives.
You see those big waves knocking people off their feet or making it difficult to stand. That plugs into, designing good buildings that can withstand these tremendous forces. Okay, let's go. Namaste, Didi. This earthquake is like the Rosetta Stone. Having these high-tech devices, GPS units, satellite radar, interferometry, the seismic network, All this together will help, paint a big picture of what happened, not only just now, but what might have happened in the past and what will happen in the future. So we're going to learn so much from this earthquake.
Across Nepal, the earthquake destroys or damages more than 700,000 buildings. This is Bhaktapur, as the tremors began. It's the old capital of Nepal and a World Heritage Site, now destroyed. Almost 5 miles north is Sanku, one of the towns worst hit by the earthquake. Almost the entire center has been reduced to rubble. Over 100 died. Teacher Sunil Singh escaped.
This used to be my bedroom. This is to be our living room.
When the earthquake came, Sunil was at home with his elderly mother. The house started shaking. Sunil rushed her outside.
I was very scared. The earth was moving. I was holding on to my son tight. Our house is ruined. It really hurts. We don't have the money to rebuild our house.
That was so scary that we feel very much grateful to be alive.
The death toll here is high. Lisa is one of Sunil's pupils.
My mother and elder sister are there when earthquake came. That's why they both died together. At the time, I was in college. When I reached at my home, then both are died. That was I can't say.
This is a time of deep grief. The Hindu tradition here decrees bodies must be dipped in the Bagmati River 3 times and then cremated. The ashes scattered on the water. Families are encouraged to cremate their loved ones as soon as possible to avoid disease spreading.
I would have been killed, but I ran. Pushing my way through, I survived because I ran. Houses were falling on both sides. A man who ran with me died, saying the words brother. He said brother once, and never again. My heart is broken to see my family members and the people I shared a house with dead.
It's extremely painful when 4 of your family members die. We're here for the final rituals now. It's a pain that will be with me forever.
The disaster's far from over. The Nepali Parliament is in session when the country is rocked by a second major earthquake. Scientist Roger Billam is in Kathmandu when the tremors start.
Okay, about a minute ago there was a very violent earthquake. We don't know where it was, probably about 20 or 30 kilometers from Kathmandu, and it set the whole valley shaking just like it did in the main earthquake. Everyone was absolutely terrified. They could hardly stand. The car we were traveling, it was rocked backwards and forwards, and I could still feel small movements shaking the car.
Well, that was pretty exciting.
I think it's still moving.
It is still moving.
Grief. To see people in a wide open space with their arms outstretched, wondering what was going to hit them, even though there was nothing above them. There were only trees and birds. They were terrified something was going to come out of the sky and zap them whilst they were tottering around trying to stand up. You have no idea how scared these people are until you actually see them. People don't do that unless they've just recovered from an even worse shock, which of course was 16 days ago, the main shock. I've dialed up the USGS earthquake page, and I'm sitting here waiting for a dot to appear on the map to tell me how big and exactly where it was. Wait a minute, there's got to be something wrong. Sorry, it's a 7.4, but yeah, it is. It's a 7.4. My goodness. So this is only a little bit smaller than the main shock. It was not a trivial aftershock. This was a really major event. Let's go and talk to the survey department.
It was magnitude 7.4.
Nepal has been struck by a second earthquake in less than 3 weeks. The first was on April the 25th, about 50 miles northwest of Kathmandu. Magnitude 7.8. Aftershocks spread eastward across the country towards Mount Everest. The epicenter of the second earthquake is around midway between Kathmandu and Mount Everest. Originally, it was magnitude 7.4, then adjusted to 7.3.
Oh, so there it is.
Yeah,
it's much more.
So these are today's earthquakes. These, here, the orange one.
Oh,
this is the main
please,
shock.
please.
This is the aftershocks. And today's earthquakes are moving the energy towards Mount Everest, which is right there. So, you know, we wouldn't be at all surprised to see some more aftershocks in this region tomorrow. Or the next day, or maybe next week, progressing another 30 kilometers. You know, it's like the Himalayas suddenly become unraveled, and it's unraveling eastwards. And this earthquake is going to make history because we're going to learn so much. I mean, for science, it's wonderful. For people, it's terrifying.
The second earthquake triggers even more landslides across the country. In Nepal's mountainous regions, there are more than 5,000, especially in the Sindapalchok area.
It's been a long 2 days. We got one more, to be honest with you. Check this out. See this all over the place.
Aid worker Michael Andrew is in the area visiting remote villages caught by the first earthquake. Then he's caught up in the second.
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Stay here. Major earthquake. Holy crap. Oh my God, look at that. We're okay. I was hiding behind this rock right here. Holy crap, I'm shaking. I'm okay. Just relax, wait. Oh my gosh, it's like the whole mountain's coming down. It was a big earthquake. I mean, we could feel it bouncing us up and down, maybe 30 or 40 seconds. We're out in the... Oh my gosh, look at that. Holy shoot. Okay, we were just on that trail, I kid you not, 20 minutes ago, right there where those rocks are coming down. That is crazy stuff right there. Huh?
Things happen so fast, you don't really think about what you're doing. You know, you when you feel like your life is in danger, you just kind of react.
We're fine, we're good. I saw the rocks coming down, I dove behind a rock. But look at that. Those are all landslides up there. It's crazy. So we got to keep our eyes peeled up here for rocks coming down. I was looking and there were some trees moving, which told me there was some rocks. You know, some of these rocks are thousands of pounds in weight.
I was just in awe that the mountain across from me, it seemed like the whole mountain was coming down. There were landslides and smoke and debris coming down. And the thing about, you know, these landslides is these rocks are not small. It could be 500, 1,000, couple thousand pounds in weight, and from that elevation and the speed they get, it's just like a missile. And so you can hear it. It sounds like thunder. So we're sitting out here waiting for our helicopter to come get us. A lot of aftershocks. We're a little kind of like on the edge. Here's the landing pad for a helicopter. We're just basically chilling, waiting, but we're super nervous. Can you imagine being buried alive and your body never being found, even if they knew you were there? Larger landslides, the huge ones, there is nothing you can do to outrun it, to outthink it, to outhide it. If you're caught in one of those big ones, you're punching your clock. It's over.
One of the villages near the epicenter of the first earthquake is Arukut, less than 10 miles away. People who lost their homes are starting to rebuild their lives.
He's my father. He's 72 years old. She's my mother. She's 55. And she's my daughter. She's 6 years old. She's my sister. And my wife feeding her kids. And that was my son, only a 9-month-old. This is my home. It's all destroyed inside. At that time, my nephew is sleeping in that room, and my sister is lying here with my daughter, and my wife is feeding my small kids, 8-month-old kids here, and I'm just there. And it's at 11:56 in local Nepali time, the home is shaking suddenly, shaking like this. And I said to my sister and wife, just go out.
Huge rocks rained down on the village. Neemil and his family escaped death by only a few feet.
We ran from here, and when I reached here, this big stone come from up, this big stone. See, it's like a small home. Yeah, it's fell down from there, and we all 6 people are here.
Many families have only a temporary tarpaulin for shelter. Nights are cold, and the rains are on their way.
2, 3, go.
It's very bad. Here is a lot of mosquito, and see, my baby is 6 here. So mosquito made this. 70-80 people are staying in this long tent. So about 20-25 families is staying here. So all people have the same problem like me.
Nepal is a country at the mercy of natural forces. It's not just earthquakes, avalanches and landslides. Very soon, the monsoon season will start and the disaster will enter a new phase as torrential rain threatens to destroy already damaged buildings. Across the country, ancient temples and royal palaces lie in ruins. Thousands of years of history and culture destroyed in moments. Architect and UN consultant Kai Weise is battling to save what remains.
Most of these temples are still being used, and they have religious value as well as purely cultural value. And very clearly, these two temples sort of create this whole space here, which is a part of the identity of the city. One of the most critical things that we're working on immediately is how do we stabilize these structures before the monsoon comes about 6 weeks' time. And if it starts raining and the water seeps into these structures, the whole thing could collapse. So if we look at these piles of wooden beams and even we can see that some of them still have the carvings, that'll be a major challenge just trying to figure out where these different elements came from if we're going to reuse it for reconstruction. The only problem is that it's, the big earthquakes only come every 80 to 100 years, so there's a generation gap very often, and then they have to relearn the need to protect themselves. And after the last earthquake, I mean, we were still reconstructing after 80 years.
Back in Colorado, Roger Billam has started analyzing the earthquake data. It's early days, but Roger already believes Nepal faces yet more danger.
The thing about this earthquake is that it happened right next to the rupture zone of an earthquake that happened in 1934, okay? And that was a magnitude 8.4 earthquake, a huge event. And what actually happened was you had a 7.8 earthquake in this region, 7.8. So everything in that zone slipped southwards, and it slipped about 1.5 meters. This earthquake was more than a wake-up call. It was a real earthquake, and it did real damage. There was no foreshock. We can't predict earthquakes, and this gave us no warning. It just happened in the blue. We have no further clues about how we might get the time of a large earthquake. We've had earthquakes to the east, we've had earthquakes to the far west, and there's a kind of gap in between. That gap in between has to catch up. In other words, there might well be another future earthquake occurring in western Nepal. It's really scary. We know earthquakes as big as 8.6 have occurred in the Himalaya. There's no reason why one with that magnitude could not occur in the next 10 years or the next 10 minutes.
When we get to the mountains, we accept a certain kind of risk. And, well, this is just the risk we take. After the avalanche, I'm not afraid. I will just continue going for my passion and for my dreams.
In Nepal, very bad things have happened. And all Nepalese need to work together to get through it.
A lot of people are still very, very frightened. There's going to be a lot of people sleeping outside for a long time to come. There's going to be a lot of people in the parks and tents. It's going to take a number of years to get everyone back to where they were the day before the earthquake.
It's just lucky to get life.